Hello, stupid.
Hello, Sanya.
Hi, good morning.
How are you?
I am good. I'm excited to record.
Yeah, me too. It's I guess we recorded a little bit last week, but just to make our announcement that we were changing the recording schedule, but or the releasing schedule rather. But
hmm
otherwise, it feels like we haven't recorded in a long time.
Yeah, totally. In case you did miss our little special stupid announcement, we are cutting back on putting out episodes so we can deliver better content to you guys.
Yeah, so it's going to be twice a month instead of every week for content. Um, and let me tell you, I took better content and heavier research very seriously this month. Hopefully it pays off and it transpires, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's a daunting episode today. Not daunting, it's going to be fun, but
Yeah. I'm like, how is
I'm
it
psyching myself
daunting?
out.
You totally are. I think it's gonna be an
Yes,
interesting episode. It's a big one and very relevant.
very relevant. Happy Pride Month.
Happy Pride. Um,
Yes, it's our first episode in June, right? Yeah, so it's our Pride
exactly,
Month
yeah.
episode.
Yeah. So does
Yeah.
Montreal do like their Pride Parade and everything this month as well?
No, in Montreal, it's in August.
Okay, same with
Um,
Vancouver.
Vancouver has it in August,
I just know it's not this month. I'm pretty sure it's August, yeah, not July.
and I think Toronto is in July. So I don't think we have many. I know Calgary is in September.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about like the other cities in Canada, but I don't think we have many that are during June.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's on purpose so that we can also attract some American tourists during our Pride celebrations, because
That's
most
makes
of the
sense.
American cities do it in June. A lot of of cities around the world celebrate Pride in June, which is why it's Pride Month.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and then I think like the big Canadian cities, we try not to do it at the same time so that we can travel to different Pride celebrations.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of like sponsors and brands as well, like that sponsor Pride throughout Canada, go to each of the parades. If you haven't ever been to like a Pride parade, I like this is for our listeners. I know you have done that. Like I definitely think you should. It is, I think, one of the coolest experiences I've ever had. The Unfortunately, the one time I did go, it was 2019. I couldn't go the last year, and I think the last couple of years before that, Pride Parade was possibly canceled because of COVID. But I still remember it was so fun. Like, and I remember this like so vividly, just because right after that COVID happened, and we couldn't touch each other. And I remember just like I was in one of the floats, and it was so fun, just like having so many people around us. People wanted to touch us like we were celebrities. I
Yeah,
remember like hugging random kids. Like it was such a
it's
good time.
so heartwarming every time and so wonderful. And it's just to see all of the community organizations come together and to like it's just a really really beautiful day. I like it so much. Every time it brings me to tears. Every time I go to the parade. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think last year I couldn't go because something came up, but this year I was thinking about it, and like I'm 90% sure it's in August because I remember saying like, oh, is it next month? Do I need to like plan around it? But yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to it. Maybe I'll try and go to the Montreal one.
You should. That'd be so fun actually. Yeah.
Yeah, or you should come to
Totally.
the Vancouver one.
Also that I could do that. I
Yeah,
could actually very easily do that. Yeah.
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 Now that we're done
So
making plans,
yeah. Right. Wait, hold on everyone. Let's just pull out our schedules.
yeah. Uh,
Yeah. Oh, but it's nice. It's nice to hear your perspective on the Pride Parade, because it's obviously very heartwarming for me to see. But I think a lot of people who don't go um, often think of the stereotype of like, oh, it's a bunch of like uh, half naked dudes like dancing and grinding against each other on a float, which there's definitely some of that, but it's not all that. It's mostly not that. It's mostly cute organization and companies who have like uh, diversity committees walk and represent their organization or their community, or their company, and who are just like wholesome people showing that they exist and they're proud and they're there. You know?
exactly. And a lot of children are in the
Oh yeah.
stands. A lot of families, that support each other. Like I think it was just a really good heartwarming experience. I mean, I know there are other parades, but like for I don't think there's anything else like Pride Parade. Like that's all
Well,
parade.
not here. I think like in countries that celebrate carnival and stuff like that, it's
Yes.
similar kind of parade. It's the same style.
Yeah.
um, and there's a bunch of fun music. There's definitely some great performances and great dances, and
Mm-hmm.
like it's just amazing. It is like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's very gay, and I love it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we have that to look forward to this summer.
Mm-hmm.
um but it would have been a good segue for my subject today, but we still have your icebreaker to do.
Well, it's so funny. You said we were looking forward for that this summer. That kind of segues into my
Oh.
icebreaker. I'm going off book here, guys. And I was just thinking, because Thomas sent me a little song right before this. And I was thinking, Thomas, what is your song of the summer?
Oh, that's a good question. Hmm. Let me pull up my phone to look at my recently added playlist.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, I'm thinking Espresso by Sabrina Carpenter.
That's exactly what I was thinking. But then I did think, I'm like, I've been legit jamming to this since like April. Is it
It's more
considered a summer
spring.
song? Yeah, it's more of a
That's
spring
also what I
song.
was thinking. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Um, uh, I think I'll have to go with Chapel Roan.
I still haven't listened to her.
Chapel Roan Hot to Go, I think, is the song of the summer for
Hot
me.
to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go with that. Although summer is young and there's still a lot of music to discover, but I mean, the song I sent you is a close second to that. The song I sent Sanya earlier is "The Spark" by Cabin Crew, and the Cabin Crew did a collaboration with these kids in, I think, in like Ireland or something,
Yeah, I think
in a
so.
school, and it's just such a bop. If you haven't heard it, it's like the it's called "The Spark" by Cabin Crew. Is it's kids singing, and it's like such a banger.
So funny.
Like it's
Oh,
always in my head. I'm always like singing it, like in the bathroom or at home or whatever,
that's
or
so
even at
funny.
work.
I want to know also, like, I haven't listened to, is it Chappelle or Chappelle? I don't know.
Chapel Rowan.
Chappell Rowan? I haven't
Yeah,
listened to her yet. I've just seen her everywhere. She looks so interesting. I'm so excited to listen to the song after.
yeah. No,
Um,
it's really good. I'll send you my favorite ones. Hot to Go is one of the most popular one, I would say, right now, the most played one, because it's very poppy and very like um, upbeat compared to some of the other ones, but it's not my favorite. I think my favorite is Red One Supernova.
mhm. Okay, I'm excited to listen to it. Oh my god, now that the summer started, I wish we could record outside.
Ah, could you imagine? Can we go work outside?
I know, right? Like in class, it's like, can we have class outside? I really wish, like, the weather's like, I mean, we haven't had hot weather here yet in Vancouver, but it's just been literally perfect. It's been
Mm.
so nice that I just want to sit in like my balcony, like go on, like sit on the beach and just enjoy the sun.
Today here it's literally 35 degrees outside, which is why I have like my sweaty man towel with me, because it's so hot despite the AC. So it's really rough. I think like with the humidex factor is like 45 degrees.
Okay, that's one thing like about Toronto and Montreal. I can't. Like you guys get
Ugh.
hot, but immediately humid.
And it's like it
Immediately.
feels so swampy. It's gross, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, our like yeah, we haven't even I don't think we've even had like 25 plus so far, but it's like I think it forecasts to be like 20, but by the time like the sun comes out in afternoon time, it's just so nice in the sun. Why'd you laugh at me?
We had so many things to talk about today, and we still ended up on the freaking weather. I cannot.
Okay, but like it's just a beautiful day. I really wanted to emphasize on this because literally, like yesterday, I sat on the balcony for like 2 hours with my I was gonna say with my girlfriend, with my cat.
Happy Pride!
Happy Pride with my cat, and then and right now, like I saw her looking at the balcony door, and I immediately went, "I wish I could be outside," and that's why I wanted to talk
I
about the weather.
know. We would have to upgrade our equipment to be able
Totally.
to record outside.
Someone's always mowing the
Um,
lawn here too, so we could never. But one day, maybe.
yeah,
Um, all right, shall we get into it?
let's get into it. Okay, so it's a Pride theme episode, but
No way.
before, yeah, right. But before we get started and before I announce the subject, I just wanted to do like a little note on language and clarify the language that I'll be using in the episode. I also wanted to recognize that language is a crucial part of how people express their identity, and that I intend to use the most inclusive language possible. Um, but I also know that language is constantly changing. And though I will make efforts to keep myself up to date, I'm also open to being corrected and further informed. All right. So typically we use terms like heterosexual, homosexual, and bisexual to refer to relationships. But these can lack depth and precision when it comes to a person's relationship and self expression.
Hmm.
So we know today that sex and gender are two distinct things, and
Hmm.
that sexuality and love are also two distinct things. So let's break these down a little bit further. The term sex, when designating a person, is more of a biological term. So when talking about sex, you may think of male or female, like the XX chromosome or XY chromosome. But there's also a whole spectrum of intersex variation. So intersex variation is neither male or female, and they are more common than you think. About 1.7% of the population have intersex variation, which is as common as being born with red head or green eyes.
1.7 in the world or in
Yeah,
Canada?
the
Are you
worldwide population.
okay? Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll get a little bit more into intersex later in the episode, but
Hmm.
I just wanted to acknowledge that when we're talking about sex, we're not talking about male, female only. We're also talking about the whole intersex spectrum. Now, sexuality, by extension, share that same biological connotation. Biological connotation. So it refers more to someone's primordial sexual desire or lack thereof for another person. So you may think of heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual, but there's also a multitude of other terms to describe a person's sexual identity, like pansexual or the whole asexual spectrum, for example.
Hmm.
When we talk about gender, we refer to the social construct roles. Social, sorry. I apologize in French. When we talk about gender, we refer to the socially constructed roles, behavior, and expression, identities, and expectation of women, men, and gender diverse people. So this is what we mean when we say gender is a construct. Like gender is human invention. Do you understand that concept?
Vaguely.
Yeah. It,
Um,
it, like that's a fully acceptable answers. I have. I'll try to break it down further for you.
yeah, like that's what I was gonna say. I'm like, I've never like taken the time to like actually do research on. I understand from what I've like seen online.
Yeah.
Um, and I think like I respect everything. So that's why I'm like, I think I haven't, I mean, I haven't questioned it, you know, I've just like
Yeah.
to each their own kind of thing. Does that
Um,
make sense?
yeah. I think you might be more familiar with it than you realize,
Okay.
because it's something that's not only innate to the queer population, but that everyone expresses their gender, right? So
Hmm.
I think our generation were introduced a lot to the concept of gender roles also growing up. And I don't know if you remember, but there was the whole like, oh, Disney is pushing gender roles onto people and stuff like that. And
Oh,
right.
okay.
So like, the we were more aware that like it's not because you're a little girl that you have to wear pink and do cupcakes, you know. And the concept of tomboy and stuff like that. So that's all what we mean when we say gender is a construct. So basically, it's nothing tangible like chromosomes or DNA. It's simply an idea that we well we somewhat agree on as a society to define traits and behavior that we associate to a person's sex. So it's not any more tangible than saying, for example, that all millennials are jaded. It's just that we've come to expect millennials to be jaded.
Hmm.
But if you were to tell someone, yes, I'm born in 1987, but I'm actually quite the optimist, they're not breaking the rule. They're just telling you what they know about themselves.
Yeah.
So similarly, if someone tells you, yes, I was assigned male at birth, but I'm actually a woman, they're not they're just telling you what they know about themselves. They're not breaking any rule.
Yes. That's a really good way to put it. I've never heard that analogy before, and I feel like that should be said more often.
Thank
You
you.
know? Did you come up with it
Um,
yourself? Oh my
I
god.
did. I
That was
workshopped the analogy
amazing.
with some friends a little bit, but
That's an amazing way to put it. I think more people should hear that.
thank you. Well,
And
hopefully they will.
I think now when I am unfortunately I've had to argue with someone about these things where it's like, you know, someone else's pronouns are not your problem and they shouldn't be. I'm definitely going to use that.
So, um, thank you. It was I workshopped it a lot because I wanted to find some some terms and some examples that were related to condition at birth, like your year of birth, for example, but
Mhm.
that didn't have too many connotation that could bring us elsewhere. So I thought about like astrology, and I thought, but I was like, okay, you know what, generation like millennials, and then the stereotype that we're all jaded. So,
Mhm.
but um, so if, for example, like yeah, they can tell you, yes, I was assigned male at birth, but I'm actually a woman. They're just telling you what they know about themselves. Some people will undergo treatment and or surgery so that their body better reflects the sex that is associated with their gender, but some people will not. Okay, so you might someone might also tell you, I'm actually not comfortable identifying with man or a woman. You could just refer to me as a person. So
Mhm.
if we go back to the millennial analogy, I wouldn't say I'm jaded, but I'm not an optimist either. And also, it's rude to ask people what year they were born.
Exactly.
Um, Also, once someone tells you what they know about themselves, they can also tell you what language they are comfortable with. For me, My gender is man, and I usually use he, him pronouns, but you can definitely refer to me as she or them. I like them all.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, however, are only comfortable with him. I would argue that most cisgender men that I know, most heterosexual cisgender men that I know, are only comfortable with the pronoun him for themselves. Some people are only comfortable with the pronoun them for themselves for the exact same reasons,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's also a difference between gender identity and gender expression. So, gender identity is the internal feeling of one's gender. So, this is how you feel inside about who you are. So, this is how I can tell you I'm an optimist. I'm not jaded. I know this about me. Um, so the some common example of gender would be man, woman, trans, gender queer, agender. Um, then you have gender expression, which is how people display their gender through outfits, makeup, behaviors, and demeanors. This is really where the fun begins, where you can really play with gender and have fun with gender. So RuPaul, I say this as I adjust my pearls. RuPaul always says we're all born naked and the rest is drag. Um,
Exactly.
right? So clothes, makeup, tattoo, hairstyle, fitness, it's all just plain dress up. So you can use your gender expression to affirm your gender identity, to explore gender identity, to challenge gender construct, to challenge people's perception of you, or to signal a multitude of things. You can also change your gender expression every time you go to your closet, and you can adapt it to the message you want to send or to different circumstances that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was you who was telling me actually that at work sometimes you'll put on your blazer when you are put in a situation where you need to express some authority.
Sometimes heels too to make myself
Yeah,
appear taller.
appear taller, right? So that's playing with your gender expression.
Mm-hmm. That's
Um,
true.
my gender identity is man, but I like to wear nail polish and sometimes skirts. Even recently, I've been exploring with skirts, which is part of my gender expression. I do it first and foremost because I think it looks pretty, but I do it also to challenge gender construct and to challenge people's perception of me.
Mm-hmm.
My brother loves to wear flannel shirts. That's part of his gender expression. He likes the way they look on him, and he likes the way people perceive his masculinity and himself when he wears them. Right? So that's the thing. We're all familiar with those concepts, just we're not used to naming them.
That's so true.
Um, because because a lot of people don't have the need for naming them. But then when people try to
Do
challenge gender
something different.
construct
Yeah.
and do something different, then there is a need to name them. And then in people's sexual identity, the differentiation between sex and gender also comes into play. Some people can be sexually attracted to man as a gender, regardless of the person's sex, for example. All right, so this leads us to romantic love. So this I won't spend too much time on. We're very familiar with the concept, but though sexuality often plays a role in romantic relationships, it's not always the case. This is why we also have to consider romantic orientations. So romantic orientations can differ from your sexual orientations. Some people are bisexual, but only romantically attracted to men. Some people are asexual, but romantically attracted to men and women. And some people may not be romantically attracted to anyone, regardless of their sexual orientation. And so on and so on. The combinations are infinite, right? So finally, all of these are somewhat nuanced terms when attempting to define something as complex and as mysterious as a person's identity and desires. As unique as we all are, so is our identity and sexuality and gender identity. So I just also want to acknowledge that sexuality and gender identity, as well as gender expression, is fluid, and a person is allowed to change. And we grow, we learn, we love, we ache, we desire, we get bored. We don't expect a 40-year-old to be the same person that they were when they were 20-year-old, nor should we. But and that's valid when it comes to sexuality and love and gender expression as well. Um, no one term fits one person perfectly, but you can use as many and as few as you want when describing yourself, and you can adapt them to the context as long as you're communicating what you intend to communicate. So, depending on who I'm talking to, I might say I'm gay, I might say I'm queer, I might say a whole list of how I identify my gender. I might go into a whole debate, or I might say nothing. I might not share any of that information.
Exactly.
Right.
You don't have to.
And then when describing someone else, however, it's best to be respectful and go with their preference. And when you don't know their preference and you can't ask them, I find it's best to avoid making assumption by using the broadest term possible. So I try to use they, them pronouns, for example, when I don't know the person's preference. It's not easy. It's something that's hard to change in my vocabulary habits, but it's something I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I when I started working with Lululemon, I no longer work with them, but this was during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And for them, a huge thing was to, when we're dealing with guests and stuff like that, if they haven't identified their pronouns, refer to them as they, them. And
Mm-hmm.
I really liked doing that. And I really like spreading that as well, because I
Yeah.
think it's easier to just assume. Um,
And it
and
feels like such a small effort for such a big impact.
Exactly. It's easier for you to assume, but it won't be easy for them. So it's just the same amount of effort that it takes to say he or she, you can say they or them, and it would make a huge difference for the person.
Yeah,
You
100%.
know? Um, I totally agree with that. And I still am really mindful of trying to do that. Sometimes we all
It's
make
not easy.
mistakes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. And some contexts are more propitious for it than other. Um, some contexts require more efforts than other also, you know? So there you have it. This is the language that we'll be using today as we explore the 2S LGBTQIA plus acronym, also referred to as the alphabet.
Thank you for the
Now,
disclaimer.
oh, you're welcome. I thought it was very interesting to get into, also, and to write down and to read and to clarify for myself even, right? Um, so the intent today is to break down the alphabet, and um, it turns out it's a much bigger subject than I expected.
Yeah.
Basically, every bullet point in my notes could be an entire episode on itself.
I
Um,
bet.
yeah. So obviously, I'm gonna do. I don't think you can even qualify it as shallow dive, but short presentation description, and I have a few talking points for each letters. If there's anything that you want to talk about uh, that I'm not bringing up, or you want to talk more about something that I just glossed over, just jump in and interrupt me. Um, these notes were also a lot of research. I don't have all the answers, and I learn a lot doing the research, but I still have a lot to learn.
Mhm.
And similarly, I don't expect you to know everything, and I don't think nor our listeners should either. So let's try to make this episode feel like a safe place to learn. So should we get into it after 20 minutes of disclaimer?
I love it. Let's get into it.
All
Educate us,
right.
please.
So we'll start with 2S. Do you know what 2S stand for?
Is it Two Spirited?
Two
Is
Spirit.
it
Correct.
Two
Yeah.
Spirit? Okay, close.
Two Spirit. So in Canada, 2S was added to the LGBTQIA IA plus acronym in the last decade as a way to honor that two-spirit identity predates the colonial times.
Mm-hmm.
So traditionally, the different First Nations cultures have their own variation of the term Two Spirit, but typically these terms have historically been used to describe similar traits embodied by Two Spirit people, including gender variance, specialized work roles, same sex attraction, and spiritual identity. So, Two Spirit is often regarded as a gender identity, and Two Spirit refers to a person who embodies both a masculine and a feminine spirit. Two Spirit is not interchangeable with any LGBT terms, as it is a ceremonial term for a sacred role in the community. So therefore, it is incorrect to use homosexual, genderqueer, or trans instead of Two Spirit.
Okay.
However, a Two Spirit person may also be trans and homosexual, stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're not interchangeable, but they can have other identities as well.
Yeah.
In some case, the term refers used to refer specifically to sexuality. When I say used to refer, I mean traditionally. However, Two Spirit people did not necessarily see themselves as homosexual. So sexual relationships between a Two Spirit person and a non Two Spirit person were considered heteronormative.
Okay.
Two Spirit also referred to a spiritual identity. So in First Nations community, Two Spirit individuals were believed to have received supernatural intervention in the form of a dream or some visions. And as such, they often filled special spiritual roles in their community, such as healers or shaman, ceremony leaders, the keepers of tradition, the storytellers. Two Spirit was a complex role and identity that modern day Two Spirit individuals can use to reclaim traditions related to gender identity, sexual preference, spiritual identity, and traditional roles. The term itself, Two Spirit, came to be in the early 1990s. It was part as an effort to reclaim traditional First Nations community. Um, sorry, as part of an effort to reclaim traditions, First Nations communities sought to find an English word or phrase originating from a First Nation community to replace the term that were given to describe them by European missionaries. So each culture and language have a different term for what we now call Two Spirit people, but there was not a global term, especially in English, to describe them, other than a term that was given by European missionaries, which I won't say out loud here because it's not important and it's also kind of a slur. Um, but that's the term that were seeking to replace. So that's when the term Two Spirit was introduced at the third annual Intertribal Native American First Nations Gay and Lesbian American Conference held in Winnipeg in 1990.
Oh, cool.
The term was very well received by the different First Nations community and was very quickly adopted. So today, the term is used as a culturally specific umbrella term for gender nonconforming First Nations, Inuit, Métis people. Um, so depending on the culture individual, this can be expressed through sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, romantic orientation. So I think the key part here is culturally specific,
Okay.
right?
Makes sense.
Um, that's for Two Spirits. Was that clear? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. Um, all I knew about Two Spirits before, like, yeah, was that it is like an indigenous term for
Hmm.
someone who identifies as both man and woman,
Right. Okay.
right?
Well,
That's all I knew.
that's
So that does like help a lot.
it's not exactly that because it can be more than just the gender identity. But yeah, that's basically the important part is that you know that it was a culturally specific term because I think there has been a lot of cultural appropriation with that term in the past.
Okay.
Moving on to L. What is L for?
Lesbian.
L is for lesbian. Lesbian is
I
an
feel like I'm in
umbrella term.
school, like ABC. What's
I
A
know.
for? Apple.
Lesbian is an umbrella term for homosexual women. At its broadest, women who sleep and date women. Now, depending who you ask, only date women or mostly date women. Um, but I think that's very personal to the person who lesbian is their. I was going to say L is their identity. Lesbian is their identity to tell you how they what their identity is. In the alphabet, the 2S LGBTQIA plus alphabet, lesbian was the first term to come into existence. So, right? I thought that was interesting. For centuries, the word had been associated with the work of Sappho, who was an ancient Greek woman from the island of Lesbos. So that's where it
Oh.
comes from the island of Lesbos.
Lesbos or pose?
Lesbos.
Oh.
Lesbos.
No way.
Yeah. And she used to write poems about same gender passion. So that's where the word lesbian is from. Now, originally in the 17th century, lesbian was applied to all same gender love, both male and female. But
Interesting.
over time, the term was reclaimed by homosexual women to designate themselves. I won't spend too much time on the terms lesbian and the following one, which, spoiler alert, is gay. But because they're more well known. But I do have some interesting statistics. In Canada, lesbian make up an estimated 1% of the population. And a survey in 2022 found that queer women are more educated than the rest of the population, with 52% working full time with a graduate or professional degree, compared to only 14% of all full time worker. That's like a lot more educated,
Insane, yeah.
right? Despite this, however, um, 2S LGBTQIA plus women make significantly less money at work than their peers,
I'm not surprised, unfortunately.
right? But I was like, that perspective of how much more educated they are compared to the rest of the population really oh, that's a hard stat.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. All right. So G is for yay. So gay is also an umbrella term for homosexual men.
Gay
So
also
at
means happy, right?
the origin of the word, yes. So it's not much used in that way anymore. Now it's more to define homosexual men. Um, since the late 1960s, activists reclaimed the decades old slur gay. So by then, at that time, it was a slur. So yes, originally the meaning of the word was like light-hearted and carefree. But in the early 1900s, the word was used as an insult towards people in same gender relationships.
And like, I mean, unfortunately, I also remember like being in middle school where people would like if they didn't like anything, they would say that's gay. And I'm
Yeah,
so glad that stopped. But it's so crazy because that like we is there's a Christmas Carol with gay in it, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Isn't there someone like who's like
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
gay and that means
Yeah.
happy, and then somehow it transferred into this word of not like like, oh, that's gay, like don't wear that kind of thing, like do you know the Hillary Duff commercial that I'm talking about?
I was actually going to talk about it. I was going to tell you, do you remember why we stopped?
Yeah, because of
Because
Hillary.
Hillary Duff came and saved the gays with her iconic "That's so gay" anti-bullying PSA.
Yeah. Well, like I wonder who somehow like evolved it into this from like a good word to like a word that's a slur and then now it defines. Like it's so crazy. Like who came up with that where they're like, "Oh, we don't like it, let's call it gay." You know?
Well, it was directly linked to homophobia. It was gay is a bad thing, so I'll
Yeah.
call other bad things gay.
So insane.
But then, um,
Hillary saved the day.
Hillary saved the day. So okay, I'm just a little bit ahead of my head. Let me just go quickly see if
Sorry, I
because now I'm
interrupted your
started
thought
talking about it.
process.
No, no, it's fine. I'm glad that you remember it. So okay, in the context of the 2S LGBTQIA plus, gay refers to homosexual men, but in everyday language, it's often used as a bigger umbrella term that includes lesbians and other non-heterosexual identities, and even sometimes some non-cisgender identities as well. So some gender identities as well. But it is also often used as an adjective for more than just people. So colloquially, gay is used to describe objects, colors, actions, vibes, sounds. You're right. When we were growing up, it was used that way with a very negative connotation in the 90s and early 2000s. But then Hilary Duff called that girl, what did she say? She's like, "Oh, it's like if I said that's so girl wearing a skirt as a top," and
Oh my
everyone's
god.
jaw dropped, and we all stopped using gay that way.
Yeah.
But not all. Actually, the gay community kind of reappropriated using gay as an objective for things other than people, um, to use positively or lightheartedly, ironically, or humoristically. Do you remember the text I sent you this morning?
No. Something about the song?
Okay.
Oh no, you
No,
told me to dress gay.
I told you to dress gay, right? So, like, that's what does that mean? Well,
Dress
that's
good.
just using it as an adjective. Yeah,
Well, as soon as I hopped on this
it's
call, I'm
describing a
like,
vibe.
you look so gay. And you're like, thank you.
Yeah, I told you. I told you it's a pride episode, dress gay.
Yeah.
So that's it's used a lot in those ways these days too.
I
Or
mean, you
is
can't even say the word gay without being like smiling. You can't go gay. It's
can you say that again? I
gay.
think I lost you in my headphones.
Oh, you can't say the word gay without smiling.
I know.
Gay.
That's
Like,
true.
you need a little
Yeah.
smile.
But it's a thing that like I think Gen Z do a lot, not just with the word gay, but like the whole like, oh, it's giving something, like it's to describe a vibe or to describe like an object or something, like, oh, it's giving divorcee, it's giving
Yeah, that's so true.
right. So it's being used a lot like that too. um I would caution the context in which you would use it like that, and I would question if it's yours to use like that as well. I think it's something that some people might consider only appropriate if you're part of the community, right? So again, just use with caution. Gay men make up for about 4% of the population in Canada, and the first recorded possible homosexual male couple in history. That's a weird sentence. The first recorded possible. Okay. They're just like, well, they were maybe gay. They were gay. The first recorded gay couple in history is deemed to be Khnumhotep and Nyankhnum, an ancient Egyptian couple who lived around 2400s before Christ, even before
Even
Christ's
before
existence,
Christ.
BCE. The pair are portrayed in a nose kissing position, which was the most intimate pose in Egyptian art, and surrounded by what appeared to be their children.
Interesting. Wow. So
Right?
like it like the Greeks started a lot of not started. I guess started a lot of this. Were the
This
first
was
recorded.
ancient Egypt.
Oh, so sorry. Totally wrong.
Yeah,
Cuz it was
and
the lesbian woman, the first reported lesbian woman was from Greece, right? From
she's
Lesbo?
not the first recorded lesbian woman. She's just a poet that wrote a lot about
Oh,
lesbianism,
okay.
right? But no, there's examples, very ancient examples of homosexuality and even transsexuality um, across all cultures. It's just that
That's true.
this is the furthest that we were able to go because
Okay.
it's some of the oldest archaeological sites that we
Civilizations.
have. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. We ready to move on to B?
Yeah.
B is for
Bisexual.
bisexual. So, in the simplest terms, bisexual is a person. Bisexual person, sorry, is someone who can be attracted to more than one gender. Though people who identify as bisexual sometimes describe themselves differently. Many bisexual people have embraced the definition like the one proposed by the longtime bisexual leader, national speaker, and award winning activist Robin Ock, which goes as follows. I call myself bisexual because I acknowledge that I have in myself the potential to be attracted romantically and or sexually to people of more than one sex and or gender, not necessarily at the same time, not necessarily in the same way, and not necessarily to the same degree.
Interesting. I like that quote.
It's a cute definition. I like it too, eh? It's this broad definition of bisexuality includes people who identify as pansexual, queer, fluid, and other labels that suggest potential attraction to more than one gender. However, the etymology of the term itself is very binary. It's referring like the bi for two, so it's
Oh, okay.
referring only to two gender, men and women, which is why a lot of people
Mm.
feel it does not reflect their reality and find that other terms like pansexual, for example, better represent their identity.
Okay, that makes sense. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, right. Because that's the thing. Bisexual has a very binary connotation.
Yeah.
Um, so, though this description of bisexual would apply to many different identity, many people choose different words to be more inclusive and to acknowledge that the gender is not binary.
Mhm.
So bisexual makes up the largest group of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community. Does this surprise you?
No.
It surprised me.
Really?
I'm ashamed to say it surprised me. It makes sense when I think of it, but I was like,
Yeah.
huh. I double checked that, and we'll get into it a little bit later. But I was shocked. So in Canada, 4% of men and 4% of women um, identify as bisexual.
So 8% in
Although,
total? Oh.
yes, yeah, that's how that works, right?
Yeah, but then I'm thinking of the percentage of the people who don't identify as man and woman. Like, what percentage is
Yeah,
that?
that's the thing. I couldn't find data on percentage of people who are from the other gender activities.
Yeah.
That was literally my next sentence. Good job on catching
Oh,
that. I'm
okay.
so proud of you. Great,
Okay,
well
thank
done.
you.
That being said, it's a community that's still largely underrepresented and even discriminated against in both straight and queer spaces, even though they are the largest part of that community, the largest percentage of that community. Are you familiar with the terms bi erasure or biphobia?
No, never heard of those.
Bi erasure is a term that is gaining in popularity and in awareness. It's a tendency to ignore, remove, falsify or re-explain evidence of bisexuality in history, in academia, in the news, or other primary sources. In its most extreme form, bi erasure can include the belief that bisexuality does not even exist.
Oh.
So, yeah, one example that you hear often is bisexuality is just a phase, and that the person will eventually realize that they're in fact gay or straight.
I feel like also like a lot of times, from what I think, is when someone identifies as bisexual and then they end up in a relationship, or not end up, but then they choose a sex to be with, then their bisexuality is like negatified. Like, does that make sense? Like, I don't even
It's
think
like
that's a word.
or
Well,
or
now
straightified, or like, yeah, it's that thing.
they their sexuality kind of thing.
People assume that their sexuality has changed into, well, if you're in a monogamous heterosexual relationship, people will assume that you're now heterosexual. Or if
Yeah.
you're in a monogamous homosexual relationship, people will assume that you're now homosexual.
Yeah.
There's also the whole like, oh, we've all tried once in college kind of thing and stuff like that. Um, and another common examples involve accepting bisexuality in women while downplaying or rejecting validity of bisexual identity in men completely.
Yeah.
Right. So biphobia is like homophobia or any other um, um, like
Phobia.
Islamophobia, or like it's not any other
Spider
phobia, but
phobias.
any, yeah, it's a prejudice, fear, or hatred directed towards bisexual people. So they include making jokes or comments that seek to undermine the legitimacy of bisexual identity, like why people are so greedy, and they say that now, but I've never seen them with a man or with a woman,
Yeah.
right? Um, and biphobia occurs both within and outside of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community. It's sadly very, very common in the community as well. So bisexual are often excluded from um, queer spaces and conversation about queer issues. Because of biphobia and bi erasure, bisexuals suffer significantly higher rates of depression and anxiety, domestic violence, sexual assault, poverty. Um, Poverty when compared to lesbian, gay men, and straight cisgender men. However, I think the group that with the highest rate of poverty in the community is trans people. Bisexual also face major health disparities and poor healthcare outcomes because of a lack of prevention care and information. So, sexual health, for example, is different sometimes depending on who you're having sexual relationship with and the kind of sexual acts that you're undergoing. So, you sometimes need different information that is not always provided to bisexual people. Things seems to be changing for the better, however, with the new generation. Um, 9% of Gen Z identify as bisexual versus 4% of millennials and only 2% of Gen X. So people are more aware and of the identity and more assertive in their identity. And we're seeing also more and more representation in media. Oh,
Yeah.
did you watch the? Oh, this is a spoiler again. Did you watch? I'm going to say it anyways. Did you watch the latest Bridgerton season?
I haven't yet actually. I've been meaning to. Oh, is someone bisexual?
Maybe it's completely unrelated to this. No spoilers.
I think I know who. It's one
Mm.
of the brothers, I think. Yeah. I knew that.
Everyone, turn off your headphone for 2 seconds. Yes, it's definitely one of the brothers, and it's the one you
Okay.
think.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
They were
they
teasing
were
at it.
teasing
They were
it. Yeah,
teasing at
for
it.
sure.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm so
Okay.
excited to watch it. Okay.
Yeah. Celebrities are also coming out as bi and openly talking about it more and more.
Yeah.
Um, Chappell Rowan that you have to listen to. It's a big theme in her music right now.
Renee Rapp. Oh, wait. No, she's lesbian. Oh, I don't know. I'm so
I'm not sure.
sorry.
I'm not sure. Billie Eilish came out as bisexual also.
Oh, okay.
Moving on to T. What's the T for?
Transgender?
Transgender. Yeah.
Yay.
Transgender is an adjective, sorry, to describe people whose gender identity differs from the sex that they were assigned at birth. So people who are trans may also use other terms in addition to transgender to describe their gender more specifically. So they can say, for example, that they are trans and agender, which means that they don't identify to any gender, or that they are trans men or trans female, trans woman, sorry, not trans female, trans woman. Um, it's important to note that being transgender is not dependent upon physical appearance or medical procedure. So it has nothing to do with your physical appearance. However, people, like we said earlier, may undergo changes in their appearance. People can call themselves transgender the moment they realize that their gender identity is different than the sex that they were assigned to at birth. Being trans is not a sexual orientation, but a gender identity. Trans people can be homosexual, heterosexual, bisexual, asexual, just like anybody else. Although the word transgender in our modern definition only came into use in the late 20th century, people who fit the definition have existed in every culture throughout all of recorded history.
Hmm.
For example, from 200 to 300 before Christ, in ancient Greeks, some gods were worshipped by galley priests who uh, wore feminine attire, identified as women, and had therefore been identified by scholars as transgender women figures. This is 200 to 300 before Christ, right? A bunch
Mm.
of other examples, but they were hard to read and communicate
I'm sure, yeah.
because
I think
a
every
lot of
culture has their
dates
own
and
example. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, there's this show. I don't remember on which platform it is. I believe it might be on LTV or something like that. But I think it's called Queer History, and it goes into all of these um, uh, ignored queer identities throughout all of recorded history, and it's fascinating. It's like animated also and very like lighthearted.
That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. I need to watch it more. Um, where was I? Transgender people face a long and ongoing struggle for recognition. It wasn't until the late 2000s that they were finally widely considered part of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community. Trans people are also currently in the spotlight, both politically and in the media, in which they are subject to many debates. Tensions are high, which I can only imagine must create a lot of anxiety and distress for trans people. I have a quote here from GLAD Media Guidelines for Transgender, which explain the situation as such. The growing visibility of transgender people and more authentic media portrayal have led to greater awareness of what it means to be a transgender person. This had led to significant policy changes, which have brought a greater equality for people who are trans, including in the 2020 U.S. Supreme Court decision in Buckstock. You know what? I'm terrible at reading, and this is a long quote, and you're much better at it, and you've been
Oh
very silent
god.
this episode. So I'm going to send it to you so you can read the rest. Is
Oh,
that going to be okay
wow.
here?
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
longer. It's not that long. It looks longer here because it's a small.
Okay. 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 That landmark decision in a case brought by, among others, transgender plaintiff Amy Steffens found that title, is
7.
it 7? Okay, thank you. I was gonna be like V11.
Yeah.
Seven's prohibition on sex-based discrimination prohibits discrimination based on gender identity and sexual orientation. However, after the U.S. Supreme Court's
Aubergefell.
Ober- Obergefell decision extending full marriage equality to same sex couples in 2015, anti LGBTQ activists began to aggressively shift towards targeting transgender people, and especially transgender youth, as a wedge issue to advance their agenda. In
I'll just stop you
February,
here 2 seconds,
mhm,
just to recap and make sure we're all understanding the information. So basically, um, the anti-LGBTQ activists, after what they considered a big loss when marriage equality was passed in the US, aggressively shift their targeting towards trans people, as a way to as a wedge issue in their agenda. So a wedge issue is a way to keep creating um, a like
divide.
anomaly and a divide, yeah, between the that community and their right wing community.
Mhm.
All right, so you can continue.
Um, so in February 2021, the Alliance Defending Freedom and the Heritage Foundation, in coalition with other anti trans activist groups, released their so called Promise to America's Children. This document is a blueprint for anti trans bills introduced in legislation across the country. In 2021, more than 140 bills were proposed in over 30 state legislations targeting transgender youth and their access to healthcare and education. This concerted political tactic, combined with increasing anti trans activism for some white cisgender women in the UK, given a significant platform by British author J.K. Rowling, is creating an even more hostile and toxic culture in the US and worldwide for people who are transgender.
Hmm. So things are difficult right now for transgender people, and I think it's important to note that, what we were saying earlier about creating a divide and a wedge issue. Um, it is not. It is anti-LGBTQIA plus groups that are doing all of the attacks. Um, I mean, if you're concerned about human rights in general, regardless who you are, you should be very concerned about this. But now I'm addressing myself more to members of that wider community that I'm part of. I know some people feel um, that they are not involved in what's happening with trans people right now, but you are wrong. You are involved. It is not only attacked on the trans people, but is attacked on the entire community, starting with trans people as a wedge issue. So if for some unknown reason you're not able to find it in your heart to come to the defense of a peer, find it in your heart to fight for yourself because it is attacked on the entire community.
I agree. I feel like there's also, yeah, like you were talking about with the bisexual term, or sorry, bisexual community. There's a lot of phobia around that within the LGBTQ
Hmm. There's
plus
a lot of
community. There is a lot of phobia around transgender community
there's a
as
lot of
well.
transphobia in the community for sure, and it's very very heartbreaking, especially at a time where they need as much support as they can get. Um, but I think it's important that we keep talking about it and that we keep trying to educate ourselves and educate others. And I'm hopeful that things are going to change for the better soon.
Me too. I am. Like, there has been a lot of change, even just within the last 10 years, that
Hmm.
I'm hoping that that continues in a positive way.
Yes. Yes. Me too. Um, I think I might one day try to tackle a greater episode on trans because I have a lot to say. There's a lot of anti-trans rhetoric that I want to break down, but it will be for another day because we are moving on to Q, which is for
Queer.
queer.
I am. I am very interested in what you have to say about this term because it's the term itself is so vague to me. I don't know when to use it.
Yeah, I don't know if this is going to help. All right, so queer is an umbrella term for all non-heterosexual and or non-cisgender identities. Um, so it's for all sexual and gender identities that are not cis hetero. It's very inclusive term with a broad definition. Me, I see it as kind of the glue that hold all the other letters together in the 2S LGBTQIA plus alphabet.
Okay.
So there's actually quite a few schools of thoughts in queer theory, and not everyone agrees on how it should be used and how it should be defined.
Okay.
Some find that queer is an easy way to describe a large community such as the 2S LGBTQIA plus community. So, quote, labeling people whose sexual and or identities fall outside of heterosexual or cisgender may create solidarity among people based on commonality, which may in turn encourage them to identify with one another and create communities in which they find support and organize to initiate a political movement. So, what they're saying here is that if we say the queer community and we all identify to the queer community, well, we'll identify to each other more easily and be more prone to support each other and go to each other for help, right? Um, Go
So I
ahead.
was gonna say, so me, if someone said someone is queer, it's that, like, is that just a way to be like, okay, they're not heterosexual, but we don't know, or like, we're not gonna, like, we're not, like, they're not actually saying what their sexuality is? Is that okay to assume?
Um, yes, yeah,
Yeah.
broadly yes. So you could use yes and no. Is that a
My phone
reminder
went off,
that?
sorry.
Oh,
I thought you did the whole head nod to my phone. I was like, oops.
no. um, yes and no. I think a lot of people are comfortable with the term queer as a general term. Um, so some people will use it the same way we'll use they, them for someone that we don't know their pronouns. You can use queer for someone where you don't know the details of their identity, but you know that it's non-cis and or non-hetero. Um, but not everybody agrees on that. So some people also warn that lumping everyone who falls outside of social norms under one queer category ignores the difference between them and may misrepresent them at the same time. So some people feel that it's diminutive to call them just queer and it ignores the specifics of their identity and issues that concerns their identity precisely.
Fair. I think that's fair to say as well. I think personally I would use the queer term then if I haven't spoken to them about it, but I just know they're not heterosexual. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know? Instead of just saying
Yeah,
like, oh, I think they're gay or I think they're bisexual, I could be like, okay, there
yeah.
are queer, but I like,
Let me present you one more argument, and then I'll we can go back about on that a little bit. So some other people think that labeling a group as queer could also reinforce gender and sexualized dichotomy. So like a binary system where it's 1-0 or on off. So if we label people as only hetero or queer, it can reinforce the belief that hetero is normal and queer is not, or the other, or the exception.
okay.
Whereas by naming all form of expression and identities, heterosexual, lesbian, gay, bi, trans, two-spirit, agender, cisgender, gender fluid, intersex, non-binary, etc., we move away from that normal or not.
Yeah.
And I think that's why most form of public communications will find that the acronym 2SLGBTQIA plus is more inclusive in that sense.
Okay.
But I'm kind of like you. For me personally, it's more of like a D all of the above situation. It's like, yes, all of these are valid, including that it's a great way to talk about the community and describe the
Mm-hmm.
community. So I think that because sexual and gender identity, as well as gender expression, is so fluid and on a spectrum, it's important and it's empowering to have a term that's equally fluid and inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that it could be just as equally important and empowering to try to understand and to define yourself and others in as many words as you want, and to be able to share those words with the world around you.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, yeah. And
So, yes, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's also like I think it's a big thing is like the intention you say it with, you know? Like
Yeah,
I think the
the
people that are
context.
exactly right that have like it makes sense to say all the alphabets because they fought for these alphabets to be there. So like, diminishing it down to just one alphabet instead of saying the whole thing
Yeah,
makes sense. But then also like the intention you're saying it with makes is comes into play as well, you know?
yeah. I also, when I think back on the trans thing, I think that, well, the alphabet kind of create a distance between each community, whereas saying the queer community really reinforce like we're all one. They're coming for us.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
So I see both sides. I see the value in both.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I get it.
And speaking from my own experience only, um, I recently found a lot of comfort in adopting queer as an identity for myself. It allowed me to take some distance from the way I perceive myself and the way others perceive me as a cisgender gay man, and to reevaluate and reposition myself in that identity and in that community also.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a safe place to be like, I need to question a little bit uh, how I feel about gay as an identity for myself,
Mm-hmm.
but I still want to be in a place where I still belong to this community.
Mm-hmm.
So I just went like, okay, I'm still queer, but let me reevaluate what it means to be gay for me,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of people use queer only as their identity as well,
Mm-hmm.
and don't go back down deeper into other words. So it's very personal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is a very broad term, and it's fluid, and it's like that on purpose, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to I.
Um, Intersex, right?
I's for
Okay.
intersex. Yes, correct. So Intersex is a general term used for a variety of conditions in which a person is born with a reproductive or sexual anatomy that does not seem to fit the typical definition of male or female.
Mm-hmm.
Intersex people are not as rare as some may assume. Like we said earlier, it's about 1.7% of the population. So that's as common as red hair or green eyes and more common than identical twins.
Wow.
People with intersex traits have always existed, but there is more awareness now about diversity of human bodies, which is why we're talking about it a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People with intersex bodies, like anyone who is seen as different, can face stigma and discrimination in employment, education, healthcare setting as infant, adolescents, and adults.
Mm-hmm.
Some intersex characteristics are identified as birth, while other people may not discover that they have intersex traits until puberty or later in life, or even
Interesting.
sometimes never.
Wow.
Um, I don't know if I talk about it. Wasn't there this athlete, um, this woman athlete who discovered she was intersex because she was testing positive for testosterone on doping tests?
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah. So if she was not an athlete, she might have never discovered that she was intersex,
Interesting.
right? Intersex does not mean trans. Intersex people are assigned sex at birth, either male or female, and that decision is made by medical providers and parents. And the decision may or may not match their gender identity as a child of the child. Sorry. So if it does not match their identity, then the intersex person can also be trans.
Okay.
Most intersex people will have a gender identity that matches the sex that was assigned to them at birth. And just like people who are non intersex, intersex people can have any sexual orientation.
I actually didn't know intersex existed because it's not talked about until like probably a year ago, and it was through like Instagram where like
Yeah, it's really, really not talked about.
someone was posting like, "Hey, I'm intersex," and she was like educating everyone about what it is, and I was like, "Wow," and
Yeah.
it's really sad.
Yeah, it's very, very underrepresented.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think one of the most pressing concerns of the intersex community is the fact that many intersex children undergo irreversible and unnecessary surgeries and treatment without their consent.
Oh no.
So, for many years, the medical establishment have viewed babies born with atypical sex characteristics as having bodies that need to be fixed. Um, some babies and older children have undergo extensive involuntary surgeries for no other reasons than to make their body conform to traditional notion of what it should be to be male or female.
Wow.
The vast majority of these surgeries are not medically necessary when performed,
Mm-hmm.
and they're performed on children. There's no medical need to do them.
Yeah.
um, and they could easily and without risk be delayed until the intersex person can decide whether surgery is right for them.
Mm-hmm.
In some instance, intersex people grow up without ever having been told that medical procedures uh, was done when they were children. Other report that they were being told that surgery was necessary, only to find out that it was not the case.
Mm-hmm.
And increasing evidence show the harm caused by these surgeries when performed without informed consent, which can include physical pain, loss of genital sensitivity, scarring, sterilization, as well as significant psychological consequences. And also the risk that the sex assigned by the surgical team during the procedure will not match the person's gender identity.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so unfortunate.
And intersex people just need autonomy into making decisions about their body,
Mm-hmm.
rather than having doctors pressure parents into making irreversible decisions about the children's body without children's consent,
Mm-hmm.
without even knowing their children. When it's done so young that like the children doesn't know about yourself, but you don't know that about your child either.
Exactly.
Um, Parents and medical professionals should wait until intersex people are old enough to make their own fully informed decision about what, if any, they might not want to have any
Yeah.
medical procedures they desire.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's very, again, I don't know much at all about the intersex community and intersex people, um, because it's so little talked about, and it's
Mm-hmm.
actually quite prevalent.
Yeah.
Prevalent. Prevalent.
You got
That's a
it.
word, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're nearing the end here with A. A is for
Asexual?
asexual.
Okay.
Yes. Asexual, or often ace, referred to as ace,
Oh, I
is
didn't know that.
experiencing, yeah, I think it's beautiful. Ace. So
Yeah.
cute. Is experiencing little or no sexual attraction for others, and or low or absent desire for sexual activities.
Mm-hmm.
So you have little or no sexual attraction, or you can have sexual attraction but have little or no desire to have sex,
Mm-hmm.
or both.
Yeah.
So asexual generally is generally regarded as a spectrum, and therefore used as an umbrella term for variety, sorry, of different sexual identities, such as gray sexual. Gray sexual may enjoy sexual behaviors under very specific circumstances, or they might experience sexual interest on rare occasions only. There's
I've never
also the
heard of gray sexual before.
no, that
Gray
was a
like
new
the
one for me
color?
too. Yeah,
Okay.
there is demisexual, which only feel sexual attraction when they have strong emotional connections to someone else, and phrasexual, people experiencing a strong attraction to strangers but less attraction to people that they know well. And then so many more and so many different variation off of this. I think, I mean, you can't really quantify a spectrum, but I think this is the biggest spectrum in the community. Like there's a lot. I think asexuality is live very differently from one individual to the other.
Yeah.
Um, it does not mean aromantic. So asexual people can experience romance and desire a romantic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's also not celibacy. Celibacy is a choice not to have sex, where
Mm-hmm.
asexual is not,
Okay.
which means that they might still choose to have sex, some people.
Mm-hmm.
They might not. They might choose to have sex under specific circumstance. It doesn't mean it's a celibacy. It's
Yeah.
just their sexual identity.
Mm-hmm.
It's also super underrepresented and often misunderstood. Many people tend to assume that asexual people, they're just innocent and they don't know what they're missing out of, and they haven't found the right person, or they're prude, you know, which is not the case. Many asexual people are very sex positive. It's just that they experience sexual attraction and desire differently. Um, that was an interesting one also to research and to read on,
Yeah.
because it's a very big spectrum, but also makes a lot of sense. So there's just a lot of people who identify as asexual, but it's again a one that we don't hear about much at all, and that has a lot of negative connotation attached to it, I think.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Finally, there's a little plus added at the plus symbol added at the end of the alphabet. Do you know what that stands for?
I actually don't, but I'm going to take a guess.
Do it.
Is it just like, is it plus all the other terms? Like to be
Exactly.
inclusive?
That's exactly it.
Okay.
So plus is just for everything else.
Okay.
So the additional plus stands for all other identities that are not encompassed by the short acronym.
Okay. Like
Um, it-
pansexual.
yeah. Um, can we think of another example?
I know that's it. I was like like I was nodding my head like I'm going somewhere with it,
Yeah.
but oh, like oh my god, I'm blanking on the term, but not monogamous, but
Polyamorous.
polyamorous. Yes, thank you. Would that be fall under? You think?
Uh, Polyamorous is not a. I think a lot of polyamorous people would identify with the queer community. However, I don't believe
Because it
it's
might be
a
heterosexual. Okay.
gender identity or sexual identity.
Okay.
Um, but it could be. Yeah, it could be. I don't know. Let me look it up. Is poly a sexual identity? Oh, there's polysexuality,
Oh.
which is similar to, which means that you're attracted to people of multiple gender. Oh, it's different than polyamorous. Okay, polysexuality means you're attracted to people of multiple genders, whereas pansexual means that you're attracted to people of all genders.
Okay.
But yeah, there's many more, and there's also plus is kind of like a way to be, well, if you recognize yourself in this community, you're welcome, kind of thing.
Okay. Would you think then polysexuality is like kind of like goes with bisexuality? Because you know how we were talking about how bi refers to two genders.
Yeah, kind of. It would be in that spectrum of so for example, um I'm I I could be attracted to uh agender people and to men and to trans men. So that would make me polysexual,
Okay. Yeah.
right? Sorry, I didn't mean to leave out women. I don't want to hurt your feelings.
It's okay. I'm not offended. No, that's so funny.
uh,
Oh my god.
in queer theory and in many different activist communities, plus symbol is used at the end of many other terms also. So often you'll see trans plus or asexual plus, and it has the same intent.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it also kind of recognized that our current understanding of sexual and gender identity can change and evolve, and that there's always room for growth.
Yeah. I really like it.
So there
I
you
have a
have it.
question
Tell
before
me.
we end it. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
so we started with the 2S acronym.
yeah.
Um, but like sometimes I see 2S after the Q and stuff like that. Does it
Mhm.
matter? Is it different via country? Like why is or not why, but
So I've went about it in that order because that's the way it's recognized in Canada. Um, However, there is many different variation of the acronym.
okay.
It's the one that I found was the most inclusive for my direct community and our audience. But many different organizations and communities will use different variation of the acronym, including different orders or removing some or including some. Or it's also the acronym is also ever evolving.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, and just a quick thing that came up here is when I Googled what does plus mean right now, One of the terms I don't think we talked about yet is questioning.
So questioning is the yeah. I think that's questioning. Often people think that the Q is questioning, but the Q is widely accepted as queer now. Questioning is, I think that's a good use for the plus, actually, is to include those people
Yeah.
who don't know where they stand yet.
Yeah. That's good.
It's
I
simply
like
like
that.
people who are exploring their identity, right? Um, yeah. I think, the again, I just wanted to add a little note that sexuality is fluid. It's nothing set in stone. Gender is fluid. It's nothing set in stone. And you're not doing yourself or anyone any favors by trying to contain them in a box, right? So these terms are tools of communication, but they're not behavioral rules, and you shouldn't try to limit yourself, um, or limit others to what these terms define. So, for example, if your heterosexuality means making out with your bros, go for it. It's fine. You don't have to call yourself bisexual if that's what you don't want to. If you know you're, I don't know, it's the only example like I can think of right now. But I think the one the so when I was coming out myself, when I was, I think first and foremost, a lot of queer people have to do a lot of self reflection work about their identity, that the opportunity doesn't present itself the same way for heterosexual people. But when I was in my teens and coming out and figuring that out for myself, I remember I was sitting in a cafe and someone brought me a survey, and one of the question was the Kinsey scale. The Kinsey scale is no longer used because it's very binary, but is a scale from 0 to 10, 0 being heterosexual completely and homosexual completely being 10. Where do you place
Oh.
yourself in this?
Oh, wow.
And that just opened up my eyes to the concept of, yeah, sexuality is a spectrum. You're not 0, you're not 10, you're somewhere there, right? And everyone, but that's a binary spectrum, but it's actually a much wider circular three-dimensional spectrum than that. And then if you add gender, it's like, just there's no one person is the same. Everyone is unique, so we'll never find a term that fits perfectly everyone. So use these terms as tool of communications. Don't limit yourself or others by their definition.
I love that. And going off that example you use, like if you want to make out with your bros, but you don't want to identify as bisexual, that's fine. But be a ally. Support other people. That
Sorry, I lost you again because of my headset. What can you say that last part
Oh
again?
no.
Don't be what?
Okay, so I said, but be an ally.
Yeah.
If you don't want to identify as something, that is totally fine. It's all up to you. But support the people that have. And I
Yeah.
think
I
that's
think
what this month is about for sure.
that's a really good point. Yeah.
And
And also,
another thing that came up.
if
Oh,
you're a human being with a beating heart and lungs that breathe, be an ally.
I agree. I agree. Also, a really good movie that I recommend because you talked about your coming out is Love, Simon. I think that's what
Oh,
it's
it's
called.
very cute. It's very
It's a
cute.
cute one.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, support one another, love one another. It's Pride Month.
yeah.
Thank you so
It's
much
Pride Month.
for
Happy Pride.
educating us with all these terms and sharing your own experiences. This
My
was a very
pleasure.
interesting episode. I really enjoyed it.
Yay! I'm glad you liked it. I hope everyone liked it as well. And again, please, please, please reach out if you have feedback and you feel that I need to be educated further on any of these. I'm very open to that. I would be very grateful for it, quite as a matter of fact.
And if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, recommend us to a friend, all the fun things.
Yes. Until then, see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Tell Me Like I'm Stupid is created and produced by us, Sonia and Thomas. You can follow us on Instagram at Tell Me Like I'm Stupid.
If you'd like to support us, please subscribe and review on your favorite podcast streaming platform. Our cover art was created by Ish. Find him on Instagram at h.e.e.s.h.
Thank you for listening.